Well, it looks like this particular video is rolling, although I don't recollect clicking to make it start to roll, but it did. So today, which is September 29th, 2024, I'm going to talk about a book that is just about done. I'm not too inclined to finish the last 40 pages. It's just going to be a synopsis of what this particular author has already said. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but I've heard these things over and over since the 1970s. And, you get tired of hearing the same old things and hearing the same old claims of how humans will turn this planet destruction plan they have set in motion, they'll turn it around, and the planet's going to be saved. I think that's where this guy is headed. He's has a tendency to come down on both sides of the fence, and make it seem that he's somewhat encouraged that there's chance for the good possibilities to make their way to be the winning possibilities. And we've been talking about environmental disasters. So, why read the last pages? I know what he's going to say. That, if we all come together and do a happy dance, the world is going to be saved and everybody's going to be wonderful. Well, that's a big if, and I don't see the players in this planet or on this planet ever coming together for a happy dance. The last happy dances were staged by the primitive people carrying out their indigenous cultures, and those days are long gone. Now you know what you get. So, but the book, the name of the book is Colapse. I think I've mentioned this before. And the author is Gerard Diamond, a PhD type scientist, well regarded in most camps, but also highly denigrated in others. I think particularly because they don't appreciate his soft approach to making science. These people who denigrate this guy, they want all their science to be done in a science laboratory with test tubes and such, and meters and sensors. There's something to be said about the science that this guy has done, which is pretty much field studies. And because he mentions the particular person I'm going to mention now in his book, I'll say in a type of science that Rachel Carlson did back in the late 50s and the 60s with her now famous accounting of all of that in the book Silent Spring. And I think that book came out maybe in the late 50s, early 60s, but it gained a lot of notoriety. Yet, if we look around, we cannot say that the planet's been saved because Rachel Carlson put the concept in our minds that poisons were killing the wetlands, which would eventually turn around and kill all of us. And if we look at the situation now, 50, 60 years later, we could see that her hopes and aspirations for a turnaround never happened. And that'll be the same thing with the last 40, 50 pages of the book I'm reading in which I've pretty much made up my mind. I'm not going to finish the 50 pages because I don't want to hear the same old thing all over again. You know, if we do this, if we could all just get to come together and have meetings and collaborate, we're going to get behind this and solve it. No, it's not going to happen. You know, the world keeps getting worse and worse and worse. One of the things I see that's not happening too much, and it's not to say that it can't happen, is that the big time wars seem to be diminishing. You know, but keep this in mind. When China, Russia, India, countries of South America, the countries of Europe, when they don't have enough to feed their people, there will be warfare. There's no getting around it. When there's not enough stuff, the powers will go to war. So right now, temporarily, there must be enough stuff to go around. And people who don't have enough stuff, they don't have the power. They don't have the economics to deploy significant military might. They do it, you know, in these low-cost, low-budget affairs, which we've come to call terrorism. You know, they don't have enough money to keep a village happy, so they blow up a UN truck, and that's supposed to do something. Anyway, it's not the case. Now, this book does a nice job of picking out, I don't know, half a dozen representative examples of countries, states, who have solved or not solved their environmental problems. And it gives brief accountings of what happened in all of these successful and unsuccessful attempts to solve their huge environmental problems. And he kind of breaks it up into two types: small economies and the large economies. Now, or you can say first world and third world might be a better way to say it, as he says it over and over in his book. But some of the third world countries that he talked about, places like Easter Island, two associated islands, Pitcairn and Henderson, and there's another one that he talks about within that sphere. It starts with an M. I can't think of the name right now. But these guys essentially failed at the attempt to save their land, the thing that they relied on for their successful civilization. Easter, we all know the story about Easter Island, but he goes a little further in depth of how that all came about and what more than likely needed to happen to make those islands unsupportable of their civilizations anymore. Now, in the Easter Island, there was still about 1,000 people living on it, and today there still are about that many, and they've incorporated some outside people into their genetic pool, and I think those people are mostly maybe Chilean stock. I think Chile owns Easter Island. And Pitcairn, it seems like all the people are gone. Might be wrong on that, but Henderson Island, they're all gone. They had a tiny civilization going in, but they're all gone. And there's one or two other islands that he talked about in that section of the book. He jams in another island But this island is really more associated with, I believe, Tonga. And that island, it seems that the people somehow they managed to get together and talk out their differences and the ways they would go about saving the land so that they could at least survive. And on that island, that society, that civilization, that's about what you got. The people live there, but all they're doing is surviving. They're not really having a grand time of it, but they're surviving, and they've been doing that for many, many, many years. And they seem that the necessary means to continue surviving will be there for them, except the rising sea levels that are by now fairly well documented throughout the Pacific. So this island may get bashed anyway. In the talk in the book about the beatdown on the environment, he mentions Montana and its Bitterroot Valley, a place where certain large mining operations have taken place. Also an area that's mostly extremely delightful scenery and beauty to look at is part of the description of what's going on there. But, he points out the hard time they're having, their water problems, they got overpopulation problems. You mention that? Overpopulation problems in Montana. But that's only because everybody wants to go to that part of Montana, and see the beauty. Plus, there's a lot of people who got the money. They want to be on ranches and living the good life of the cowboy. What delusional idiots these people must be. They're going to be a cowboy. Unreal. So, they got so much money, they don't know what to do with it, so they buy a 100 or 200 acre ranch, and they live like they're cowboys. And they do it in kind of a communal fashion, because one dude set up 2,500 acres and then sold it over there in the Bitterroot, over there, and sold them off as ranches for the wealthy, the extremely wealthy people to live, and they don't have to see the rest of us at any part of their lives. They're totally immune to what's going on in the rest of the world. That's the way they want it. And countries like us, if you got the money, you can do whatever you want. I mean, if you want to describe democracy in a small sentence, you say democracy is the privilege of having the necessary funds. You can do whatever you want. That's democracy. And to a lot of folks, that sounds great. I mean, really. If I had a lot of money, I'm sure I'd buy a big-time yacht. Although I'm not sure I would want to practice big-time sports fishing, because I know that that's an essential part of what has depleted the world's oceans. They even more or less stay away from eating sea fish, because I know every time I put a fork in of the wonderful tasting bluefish or striped bass, it's requiem for a saltwater marinery somewhere around the planet. So a lot of issues here. And with the first world, I mentioned Montana. We also have to mention he brings up Australia, which is an environmental nightmare of the first order. First order. Which, and I have to bring it up because it's one of the lines from Hollywood movies that sticks with me. And the line is, I think Meryl Streep is saying it, "The dingo ate my baby." And that's from a movie, I'm not going to think of the name. Something about the dark, the deep. But, that was a movie in Australia where a woman and her husband were camping, and they had their little baby with them in a tent, and for some reason they turned their backs, and it's likely that a dingo came in and stole the baby and ate him. And then she went on trial, and she was denigrated by the Australian populace. I don't know what she got. I think she got off the hook, from the trial that was trying to blame her either with manslaughter or whatever it is when you don't do the right things to protect somebody and they die, whatever that justice is. But I think she got off of it, or it was a very small term that she had to serve. Meryl Streep, cry in the. I think it's a cry in the dark. A dingo ate my baby. I think she says took my baby. So Australia, I was reading that part of his book, and of course I thought of the Scream in the Dark or something like that. Shout in the dark, scream in the dark. No, not for anything. Australia, now this is so off the topic. Australia has made a couple other movies that I thought were quite a good deal. Now, the one that doesn't seem to get mentioned as often as others is The Last Wave. And that is an environmental movie, although you may not think so when you're watching it, but it certainly speaks to what's going on in the case of environmental issues and what can be the results. Now, this movie must have came out in the 70s. Richard Chamberlain, and who knows who else, but just a great movie with the ability to open eyes and the ability to raise questions, and way out in front of many of the popular slogans going on now. Way out in front of that. In other words, it didn't jump on a bandwagon of social issues that we got now. The problem is, and once again, getting a little off the subject, the problem is once these social issues hit Hollywood, it's always already way too late to do the appropriate things that are going to rescue the people or the things in harm's way because of the issues. It's way too late. It's already over. The destruction has happened. So, but a great movie. And, listen, Gallipoli is another one. Chariots of Fire is another one. Quigley Down Under is another one. These are all Australian movies. And I don't know why it is, but they seem to be able to make good movies. They probably make a bunch of junk ones too that I'm not aware of because I'm too critical and I am apt to be discriminating, way too discriminating. I'm not going to waste my time watching, a movie that's just garbage, which 99% of them are nothing but pure garbage. So I'll discriminate, and if I start to hear in the grapevine that there's this really good piece of celluloid out there that should be examined, well, I might look into it, And movies don't always have to be something with socially redeeming values. For example, Jaws, The Godfather, etc. There's nothing socially redeeming value in those things. But, I'll watch them with a certain amount of intensity. So anyway, to continue the dialogue on this book that I just about finished reading, and it made pretty much it a fact that I won't read the last 40 pages. There's no need to. I already know what the guy's going to say. So he did Australia. He does Iceland, which is a first world country. He does Norse Greenland, which is not a first world, it's a third world. Norse Greenland, he does that. And if it's a third world country I'm talking about, he's emphasizing the fact that they're losing a battle. That's all there is to it. Now, the North Greenland, he points out that they lost the battle one time already, back in, I think it was I want to say the 1400s or so. The European descendants of the original Norse packed up and left. They just couldn't make it anymore. And he goes through various reasons why that happens, as he does in all the cases. And they all made pretty good sense to me. Who am I to refute a noted scientist, ornithologist, and not a bad writer. I mean, he writes very easy prose, down to earth. Anybody can understand what he's talking about. And he's had a number of popular successes. I think Guns, Butter, and Ammo is one, and a few others. But like I said, much of his writings and maybe his speeches have given many scientists reason to have a quarrel with him. Now, I wouldn't suspect at all that a good deal of that dissension among these other scientists is the fact that he gained, unbelievable popularity and success. Unbelievable. And they're all sitting around, these ones that are detracting, they're all sitting around wishing that they could have the same success, and why didn't he? Didn't they? And when I was just saying these things, the name of another scientist who all is popular, success, and then all that success seems to have just disappeared. And that would be the infamous Carl Sagan. Boy, what a piece of work he was. Gee, Christmas. Anyway, the idea that this scientist now who wrote the book, Colapse, had many detractors. It's just the same old story over and over and over. Look at Albert Schweitzer. He had all the detractors in the world. What did he do? He came up with a way of treating his African patients with humanity, with charity, with a bedside manner that drew them to him. That's all he did. All he did was do the right things the right way. And what did the rest of the medical field do? They bashed him. And me being who I am, one reason they were bashing him, because there was no way to make money on the Albert Schweitzer model. No way. He didn't even charge his patients. He relied on people who were aware of what he was doing and who had the resources to contribute some money. He relied on the family of the patient or the whole village of the patient coming to his hospital in the Ecuadorian East African jungle. Not Ecuadorian, equatorial. Anyway, somewhere in where they're not East Africa isn't right. Be in West Africa, close to the coast, where he was. That is a famous name for the hospital. I can't think of it right now. So the whole village would come there, and the family, and they would do odd jobs around the hospital, helping out when they could, but primarily they would give the patient a stressless or a stay at the hospital that was less stressful for them. They had their loved ones around them. And this was Dr. Schweitzer's method, which of course was heresy for the doctors who live off their receipts. You know, they do their scientific studies on receipts. What quality of paper should the checks be written on? That's what they're about, not the well-being of their patients, the psychological sanity of their patients. So Schweitzer struck out on that, and I mean he stayed in business, I think, to the rest of his life. My famous story about all of that is that Life magazine, in about 1963, 1964, they got wind of this hospital going on over there in Africa, and they said, we're going to send a corps of our top journalists over there, and they're going to sniff this out and come to the bottom of it. Well, he sent them over there, and they all found that what Schweitzer was doing was the right thing. And a fully well documented an issue of Life magazine. I think it was Life. I don't think it was Look. Anyway, you're never going to win if you're on the charitable side of things. If you're on the morally correct side of things, you're never going to win. You're going to get beat down by all the monsters that are in the world. Lots of monsters. They're all over the place. So anyway, getting back to the book, he covers all these places, and I find it, I think there's no reason for me to even bring this up, but there are descriptions in his book about ways in the islands that match almost to a T the totally fictionalized and no accounting in what I know of history of the Pacific. No accounting. I knew nothing. But my book, Blackbird, definitely spoke similar words about how the islanders lived and their atolls and so on. I don't mean the atolls in the Garden State Parkway. I mean the atolls, coral reef, ringing a volcanic disturbance. So I thought that was amazing, and there was a couple of other things that cropped up in that book that appear in some things I may have written over the years. And I don't know from this guy from nothing. The first coming of any sort of knowledge of this guy, pretty recent, maybe not that recent, 5, 6, 7 years ago, but fairly recent. Now, and that would not be able to cover things that I had written because either I hadn't read these things yet or something like that. But the point is, I was pretty amazed at the closeness to what I had come up with. And once again, I really wasn't doing specific research like this guy was. It was just my general readings that I culled information about blackbirding and other things. So he covers in the book the problems with hard rock mining, the problems with logging, deforestation, destruction of the rainforest, and so on and so forth. But every major catastrophe that has happened to the environment, he more or less covers all of that. And I want to say he covers it in a rather superficial fashion, which is why the book is eminently readable, because he's not getting down to the nitty-gritty, which would bore most of us. But the way he hits it on a fairly simplistic level is quite wonderful. And on the other hand, what it also does is it makes you regret the amount of deforestation that has taken place on the planet already. Some of the statistics are just, you can't comprehend. 50% of timber is already removed. There's very little left. So, and you can't sugarcoat it. I mean, 50% of the vegetation that was available on this planet is gone. There's no way you can make that out to be a good thing by sugarcoating it. And in this book, I believe the author is trying to do a lot of sugarcoating by saying, oh yeah, this happened, but it's not that bad, because it made groups come together to talk about it. Yeah, a lot of good talking about deforestation is going to do when the deforestation has already taken place and the polluting of the waterways has already taken place. Ain't no amount of talk going to bring that stuff back. And that's one of my major complaints about this book, that he's fully in the camp of those who believe they can talk these issues out over a UN cup of coffee, which I say you can't. I'll go back to early days in the 60s when it's talked about a lot on the street. But you got to get the UN out of New York because it's dirty in the place, Back in the 60s, that was what they used to say. Now, everybody's making so much money off of that skyscraper sticking up on the East River. Everybody's on board now. We're going to make a bundle of money. Yes, we are. We're going to have diplomatic license plates so we can park anywhere we want. We can terrorize and do whatever we want. We'll get away with it. Not a problem. Love that UN. Anyway, things go on. This guy writes about him, and I think that's all I really want to say about Colapse. I don't want to go on, and I'll leave it up to you to read. The point is, like let's take Rachel Carlson's Silent Spring. I don't think too many are reading that anymore. Or about the stuff from Aldo Leopold, Sand County Almanac, and many other books. Not too many folks reading that, I don't think. They've drunk the Kool-Aid. They're all into the current manifestation of how we think about nature, that nature takes place in a test tube, in a report document. Something like that's nature. You know, the fact that once nature's gone, in most cases, it's gone forever. And to the credit of the book in Collapse, he points out over and over that just because a certain species has been saved, he says if you look deeper, you'll find out that it's been saved in a different form, that it's not the identical species that was lost, but it's a hybrid of some sort. And he says when that happens, it's still gone. The original thing is still gone. And that would hold true for plants as well as animals. So I'll say the final judgment on this book is that it's worth reading. It has a lot of good points, but you have to be ready to refute a number of quotes in the book, a number of accountings in the book. Unfortunately, I watched these documents that peer into things like sports fishing, commercial fishing, logging, third world nations. And what I see is just incomprehensible. I can't believe what people do. I just can't believe it. If they keep doing it, there will be no more planet with human beings on it. It can't happen. It just can't happen. The numbers don't support it, which I think is a concept he does point out in the book somewhere, maybe in a different way. You know, I'm sure he says it over and over, that the increase in world population, if just left at its current, but seemingly small rates, 1.4%, or whatever, 30 years, it's gone, it's over. You can't support that growth. It's done. And he points out, people in the first world are going to have to start to say to themselves, we have to live with less. We will have to tolerate these less than perfect situations that we used to have when we were ruling the roost, because with the billions knocking on their door, they're not going to be able to hold them off. It's happening all over the place. It's happening across the Mexican-United States border. You know, they're just millions are coming in, and you're not going to be able to support it. It's over. There's only so much cream on the top of the glass of milk, you know, before all the cream is gone. And what the first world nations inhabitants are saying, we don't believe it. We're going to live and eat to our heart's content because we don't believe it. Let the borders be open. Let everybody come in. We'll feed everybody. We'll give them all the medicine they want. We'll give them all the housing they want, because we just don't believe it. We don't believe there's all this bad stuff. I don't care what the protesters say or what the scientific studies say. We don't believe it. We're going to go out and buy another yacht. We're going to keep doing what we do. And of course, the ones at the top will survive longer than those below the top. And in saying that, I mean, one of the things he does over and over when he's describing how the reaction to these environmental disasters are, he likes to categorize them as two possible ways. One is bottom-up reaction and top-down. Bottom-up is the people making big protests and trying to hold off the malicious people who are destroying the planet. And then you have the top down, which are the elites who really don't care, about all of this, but they're forced to realize that they have to do something, because if they don't, then they're going to be out without water and wood and energy. They won't have their labor force to make their gizmos for them, all this stuff. So that's top down. That's where they get together and they have their meetings. And they try to save a rainforest with a couple of board meetings. That's a nice play on words there, huh? A couple of board meetings. We're having a board meeting on boards. Yeah, the boards from the Amazon. Okay, well, I did say I was wrapping this up, and I'm going to wrap it up. I'm not kidding this time. I'm going to wrap it up. This was a talk, September 29th, 2024, mostly to do with, and the outcome of my reading the book Colapse by Diamond. Some of his other, I tell you, his guns, something, and ammo, guns, something, and ammo. I think The Last Chimpanzee is another one of his books. And he's probably got 7 or 8 of them. All right, I'm gone. Listen, I hope you're chomping at the bit to hear my next presentation. Just don't bite your tongue or your cheek, the inside of your cheek, you know what I'm saying, when you're chomping at the bit. Okay, bye.